And with that, I will turn it over to our presenter, Anne.
Yeah, so before I start, James, Mary Jean shared in the Q&A that the chat is not open, and someone else just said the chat is disabled. So I don't know if you could work on that while
All right,
I
I
get
will.
started.
Yep, I will take care of that.
Thank you so much, Mary Jean and Chava, for bringing that to our attention. So welcome to Technically Speaking, a closer look at how to increase positive outcomes with high-tech AAC. I'm Anne Bedard. I'm an SLP like a lot of you, but I devote some of my time to assistive technology. And within that, I devote my time to AAC, augmentative and alternative communication. And I have my contact info there for you if you want to go ahead and email me afterwards. I have a fun little picture here of my friend Jack. He is doing hand over hand on his dolly to make her use his talker, which I thought would bring a smile to some of your faces, but it's also a good reminder that this is what happens when we use hand over hand prompting with a lot of individuals, that they then think that that's okay to do to other people. So I'm going to give a quick plug here to the AbleU presentation I did back in 2022 called Reverse the Curse, Device Abandonment and Prompt Dependency in AAC. There is the regular YouTube link, but also beginning January 12th, if you watch it through this bottom link and you actually register, you can actually get ASHA CEUs for watching the recording. And so this is kind of like the part 2 to that part 1 webinar, which was all about implementation of like the basics. And then today we're going to talk about some more advanced things that make implementation more successful. So my speaker disclosure is that I'm a salaried employee of EastCon. It's a regional education service center located in Northeast Connecticut. And my work is partially funded by a grant from the Connecticut Tech Act project. I'm also a member of ASHA, and I facilitate a statewide AT-AAC community of practice. And now I would love to know really quickly who you are. So I'm going to launch the poll. And this is data that I am required to collect for our grant. So if you could go ahead and report your role as you see it, that would help me out so much to report back to our grant and continue to get funded for me to continue to do my work. All right, we've reached 80%. That is mastery criteria. Woo. And if you want to put in the chat, if you're any other role besides an SLP, I know most attendees are probably SLPs, but if you're somebody besides an SLP, if the chat is working now, oh, it looks like it is. Yes, thank you so much for sharing what your role is. If you're not an SLP, I'm always curious. So lots of OTs, early childhood teacher. If you're an SLP, you don't have to put it in the chat because I know it's 99% SLPs. But just if you're anything else, I'm just curious. Awesome. Assistive technology. Some other AAC consultants and specialists. Great. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And our objectives today are for you to learn some software settings to reduce problem behavior, to demonstrate your ability to choose appropriate vocabulary targets, and for you to identify some strategies within some videos. So let's go ahead and get started. This is Jack again. For those with visual impairment, Jack is looking very mischievous as he points to the video camera because he is a happy tapper, what I like to call a happy tapper. I'm sure you've met others who are doing this. They're leaping before they look. They're impulsively touching everything, not just their talker, but everything. They're repeatedly tapping on the same exact spot, which is not functional. They're tapping on other things too, not just touch screens. Maybe they like to tap on the table. Maybe they like to tap on your leg. And some people might even call this tapping a stim or stimming. So if you hear people reporting that, you've probably got a happy tapper on your hands. So let's go ahead and watch a video example of some happy tapping.
What color is this?
Go!
Red. Green.
Green.
Red. 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 Green.
Remember,
one time.
Red. No, tap.
Red.
Uh-oh, look.
And.
Yeah, uh-oh is right. So Jack is just trialing this talker for the first time this day, and his natural inclination is to just go for it. Don't even look. Sometimes you saw he was looking at me and his finger was still going. And that's definitely something that I'm sure some of you have seen as well. So what can we do?
What color is this?
Go!
Red.
The strategy that I recommend is increasing dwell time or hold duration. So it's called dwell time within some of the specific apps, and it's called hold duration in the iPad setting. And what this does is it increases the time that your finger must dwell or hold on a button before it is activated. So within the iPad iOS, and I'm talking about iOS 16 for anybody watching this in the future, because I'm sure it's going to get updated very quickly. But in iOS 16, you're going to go into settings and then accessibility and then touch accommodations. And I'm going to show a video next of the steps to do that. But if you're doing it within your specific AAC app, like for instance, in Touch Chat, you're going to go to menu, settings, dwell time. Same exact menu in the Lamp Words for Life app because it's made by the same manufacturer. If you're using TD Snap, you're going to go into user, access method, touch enter, and then you'll see hold time. If you're using Proloquo Go, you're going to go into options, access method, and then hold duration. And if you're using the software called Cough Drop, you're going to go into preferences, selection settings, and then must press button at least. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the iOS way to do it because I think that probably covers the majority of what you guys are using. Because if you're doing it across the iPad, you don't also have to do it within the app on the iPad. So I think that's going to capture the most of you. So I'm going to show you that how-to video.
This is the settings app. This is accessibility. This is touch. And this is touch accommodations. Now you don't want to turn them on yet because it'll make it really frustrating for you to actually set up the hold duration. Because you don't want to have to hold it as you increase it, right? But now, if I turn it on, you'll see if I want to make it lower, I have to hold that complete second. It's actually showing me, like an eye gaze target, how much longer I need to hold it. Okay, so for the initial setup, leave that off. But once you've got it to where you want it, I usually start with 2 and then either go up to 0.3 or down to 0.1. Now I would turn it on and go into my AAC app.
So again, just to reiterate, this is across all the things you do on the iPad. So if you notice now when you try to switch apps, it's not working, it's because you're not holding for that 0.2 seconds or whatever you set it to. So it is across the entire iPad. There is actually another strategy called ignore repeat that's very similar. So I wouldn't do both dwell time and ignore repeat. I would pick one or the other. But what ignore repeat does is it increases the duration in which multiple touches are treated as one touch. So on the iPad in iOS 16, you would again go to settings, accessibility, touch, and touch accommodations. But once you get there, there's another spot right below the one we just looked at, which I'll show you in a video. Within the TouchChat app, there's actually no setting to do it. So you would have to do it within the iPad iOS. Same thing for Lamp Words for Life because they're made by the same manufacturer. Within TD Snap, you're going to go to User, Access Method, Touch Enter, and then connect multiple taps. And it's going to let you adjust it to connect more taps or less taps into one single touch, one single activation. Within Proloquo to Go, there's no setting within the app to do this. So again, you would do it through the entire iPad. And then within Cough Drop, you would go to Preferences, Selection Settings, and ignore repeat hits 4, and then it will let you choose the number. So let's go ahead and look at how to do it within the iPad.
Here's your settings app. Here's accessibility on the left. Touch accommodations. And again, don't turn them on yet until you're done setting up. Ignore repeat. Maybe you want it. That person's a really quick tapper, so you just need to set it to 1.5 seconds so that it ignores those multiple touches within that 1.5 seconds. And now you'd go ahead and turn it on and switch into your AAC app.
And then I'm just looking at the Q&A. Are you concerned that this will impact the client's use of cause and effect of the device? So there's definitely a balance to it. What it's going to do is slow down that impulsivity because they have to be more intentional in their touch because nothing will happen for the dwell time. Nothing will happen if they just tap it very lightly, very quickly. So they have It usually what I see is it brings their visual attention because once nothing happens, they look at why nothing is happening. And now they're more focused on what they're touching. And for some individuals, it does take some learning. So they might need some support from an adult where the adult models that they're touching and holding. And maybe they even narrate that and they say, I'm touching and holding before they remove their finger. And if the individual needs hand over hand in order to learn that they should touch and hold, that's where you have to use your judgment. Is it worth us using a hand over hand prompt to teach this new skill? Or should I turn the dwell time off or lower it, like just go to 0.1 second to see if that makes a difference without having to add more support, because we really don't want to have to be using hand over hand, like I said in the beginning. So you really do have to use your best judgment and kind of play around with it and see what is best for the client. And some clients, maybe with cognitive impairment, might not understand that they just need to hold it there a little bit longer in order to get that cause and effect. And so it would take some practice, or it might take using a different strategy, not this one. Okay, and then Lane is saying the video's audio is difficult to hear. I apologize about that. I don't think there's anything I can do about that right now, but maybe just turn your volume up when I start to play one of the how-to videos, so I apologize. Okay, when the screen goes dim or goes black, this is a big one. I just saw it in a school yesterday. I saw 2 different students yesterday morning. One of them, when his talker dimmed, he would reach out and tap it to make it come back on. And then the other student, when his talker dimmed, the adult working with him would reach out and tap it to make it come back on. So that's a huge distraction, not only to the individual who's using the talker, but even to the person with them. So that's definitely something we don't want to happen. And then the other thing that I see happening, if it's not an impulsive need to turn it back on, it's that the individual kind of forgets that their talker has language on it because it's just a black screen. So it's no longer serving as a visual support. And so that's another reason why we don't want it to go black. The strategy to fix this is to change auto lock to never. So it stops the iPad from dimming or going black. And on the iPad with iOS 16, the way you would change this is go into Settings app, Accessibility, Display and Brightness, and then change the auto lock to never. So let's go ahead and look at that. And I apologize if it's quiet. Go ahead and turn your volume up right now.
Settings, display and brightness. Scroll down, auto lock, never.
Okay, let's move on to my happy hackers. What does a happy hacker look like? It's getting into the editing or settings menus. It's closing the app. It's using their talker as a camera, using their talker as a toy for entertainment, trying to find videos, accidentally erasing their custom vocab file. Or yes, I have seen over the summer, somebody erased their entire AAC app. They deleted the app entirely, which then requires you to reinstall it. So we really don't want this stuff happening. Yes, there's always a way to fix it, but sometimes it's devastating to everybody else. And we don't want to have to take the time to solve those problems. So what can you do to solve this problem? You can lock the app open, and you can also block specific menus within the app. So this turns a device or a tablet or an iPad into a talker that is dedicated to communication. And this is how the different companies that sell iPads as dedicated communication devices are able to get them turned into medically necessary medical equipment. So this is like a known thing you can do, but even if you just buy an iPad yourself or the school or the family, you can also do this. So on iPads with iOS 16, what you want to do is go into the Settings app and then Accessibility and then Guided Access. And I'm going to show you a video specifically of what to do after you get to the Guided Access section. Within the TouchChat app, you could go to Menu, Settings, and then use Menu Passcode. And what that'll do is every time somebody touches on the menu button, it's going to ask you for the passcode. It's exactly the same within LAMP Words for Life, again, because they're by the same manufacturer. Within TD Snap, what you're going to do is go to System, Preferences, and then Use Passcode. And very similarly, when somebody touches on the menu button to edit, to go into edit mode, it's going to ask you for that passcode before you can proceed. Within Proloquo Go, you're going to go to Options, Restrictions, or there's another way to do it. You go to Options and then Lock Options. So they kind of give you two different ways to do it. And then within Cough Drop, you're going to go to Preferences and then Require a PIN when exiting speak mode. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it in iOS 16.
Settings app, accessibility. Now scroll all the way down and there is Guided Access. Turn it on. Now when I go into a different app, if I triple click the power button, which is in the lower right of the new iPad mini 6, I get some options I need to change. So that power button is also called the top button. So you can enable or disable it. I'm going to enable it. The volume buttons can be enabled or disabled. I'm going to enable it. You want to keep motion on if you want it to rotate. Software keyboards you want on if you want to be able to type using the Apple on-screen keyboard. You definitely want to keep touch on, and you definitely don't want to use a time limit for an AAC app. The other thing you can do is you can draw a shade, resize it, and block parts of the menu. Be sure that you're actually blocking what you want to block. Make sure the shape is flush against the side corner and extends all the way across a menu button that might not have like a clear border. And then go ahead and hit start and set up your 6-digit passcode, which is just a second layer of protection for anybody who figured out how to triple click the home button.
I'm just looking at the Q&A again real quick. Yeah, we did test the audio, so I think just in my actual videos, I was a little soft-spoken. I apologize for that. Please tell the difference between dwell and release time. Okay, so dwell you actually have to touch and hold. Release time is, release time? That's not ignore repeat. So can you clarify what you mean by release time? I thought you were asking the difference between dwell and ignore repeat. Does this affect battery life? You're talking about auto lock set to never. Yes. The thing that uses the battery the most is the brightness of the screen. So by setting it to never go black, you're definitely using more battery life. What I tell people is to turn the brightness down to about 50% in order to see if that'll make the battery last as long as you need it, and play around with that brightness level in order to balance out the fact that now you have it never going black. There's a way to remove the ability to access the apps within the system as well, such as the camera. I have had to call a few times for this. Can you go through that process? Remove the ability to access the apps within the system. So can you clarify if you're talking about the iPad and what's called screen time? And then I'll go ahead and talk about that. I have a happy hacker who has figured out that holding the power button down and turning the iPad off will reset guided access. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, on my next slide, I was actually going to say how there is, unfortunately, a way to hack guided access. Maybe it's not. Yeah, so setting a passcode for a specific menu or for guided access does not lock the vocabulary from being used for communication. That is one of your test questions at the end to get your ASHA CU. So I just wanted to go over that. You're not locking the whole device. You're just locking them from getting out of their AAC app or from getting into a menu. If you actually have a passcode that locks the entire device, so like when you take it out of their backpack and you go to use it, you have to enter a passcode. That's not efficient, and you probably are limiting the individual from being able to access the grid independently. So if that's what's happening, you need to actually turn off that passcode, which is like system-wide to get into the iPad. So here's how to turn that off.
Settings, Touch ID and passcode. You'll have to enter your current passcode and then turn passcode off, turn off, and you'll have to enter your iTunes password.
Okay, so that's if every time you turn the iPad on, you're having to put in a passcode, just like a phone, like most people have their phone set up that way. You don't ever want to have a talker set up that way because it's restricting. So that's how to turn that off. When you're setting up an iPad out of the box, brand new, this is how to avoid setting up that system-wide passcode.
So make sure when you get to this phase of setting up an iPad brand new out of the box that you don't create a passcode, and it might not look like that's an option. So what you could do is you could push this button in the bottom right corner to make the keyboard go down, and then you'll see this little passcode options, and that's actually a link that opens this menu, and the last option in the menu is don't use passcode. That's what you want to do. And then it's going to bother you by saying it highly recommends a passcode, but you want to say again, don't use passcode, and get to the next step.
Okay, I know that didn't answer your question, so let me just go back to the question that you asked. There's a way to remove the ability to access the apps. Oh no. When patient hits passcode button, if they hit an incorrect passcode, would that risk having the device locked entirely because the patient hit the wrong passcode? Example, a happy tapper hits numbers and makes the wrong passcode when prompted. If they put in the wrong passcode for the guided access passcode, it will say now you have to wait 9 seconds to try again. And then if you try again and it's wrong, it'll say you have to wait 19 seconds, and it'll keep increasing the amount of time that you have to wait. But I would imagine that an individual wouldn't be able to do it that many times because somebody would be with them and attending to them and redirecting that behavior. But that is what would happen if they were just left alone and they were trying to hack the passcode. It would keep increasing the time that they had to wait to try again. Okay, James is working on the sound. Oh, release time is in touch chat. Okay, I'm not going to speak specifically to different settings within different softwares besides the directions that I've already given in the slides. So I am not going to talk about a certain setting in touch chat called release time, but I would imagine that it's very similar to dwell time. But you can always go on touchchatapp.com to look up resources and also to like email them or submit a ticket to ask about a specific app. Set iOS restrictions to select specific apps and functions to lock out the user from them. Yes, so there is a whole nother section of the iOS called screen time, which sounds like it's for something else, but it has content and privacy restrictions underneath screen time, and you can set it to not allow somebody to delete an app, not allow somebody to install an app, always require the passcode to install an app. Under content, you could actually turn off. There's about 10 different apps. It gives you the option to completely hide them. So one of them is Safari. One of them is FaceTime. And there are some others underneath there. So if you go ahead and look under screen time, content and privacy restrictions, you'll see there's lots of options to hide things, but the idea is that guided access keeps them within their AAC app. So you shouldn't have to hide other apps specifically. But what I was getting to in my next slide, which I was referring to earlier.
So make sure.
Oh, maybe I don't have it, but guided access. does turn off when the battery completely dies to 0. So if the battery goes completely dead on an iPad, when you charge it back up, guided access will no longer be on. So what I tell people in my trainings before I let them have an iPad is everyone needs to be diligent about testing to see if they can close the AAC app. If they can close it, that's bad. So I need you to reopen it, and I show them what the AAC app looks like. Open that one, and then I need you to turn on guided access, which in the new iPads, you have to triple click the side power button, but in the older iPads that still have a circle button on them, you have to triple click that circle button. And I don't give anyone the passcode to get out of it because I say you shouldn't need to get out of the AAC app. You should only need to open it and relock it, which you don't need the passcode to do. So that's how I address that in my initial trainings before the iPad starts going with the individual all day long. You as the SLP, obviously, you know the passcode because you're the one doing the editing, hopefully, but nobody else should really need it. Okay, let me look at the Q&As again before I move on. Yep, so people are just talking about content and privacy restrictions. I could do a whole hour just on that, so I didn't do that piece today, but yes, content and privacy restrictions would be like another layer. If they got out of guided access, you could use content and privacy restrictions, which is under screen time, to hide some apps. Only about 10 apps can be hidden, to prevent them from deleting apps. And also you could set, so there's another section under screen time above content and privacy restrictions where you could set up a time limit, and you could set every single app on the iPad to have a 1 minute time limit. It won't let you do less than 1 minute, unfortunately. But you could do 1 minute so that if they were playing with the camera, after a minute, the camera would just stop and it would show a little hourglass and say, you've used up your time for today. But like I said, there's a lot to that, so I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now, but you could definitely do a whole hour just on that. If your iPad is on an MDM, which is like a management system, you might have the option to put the iPad on kiosk mode, which will not allow the user to get into anything except whatever it is set to. Yes, I'm not talking today about all the things you can do on a management system, like across the whole school system, for example. I'm talking about like one individual iPad that was just bought and set up as an individual account. There's definitely a lot of other things you can do when your IT person is the one who set it up and made it part of this management system. They can do a lot more things to prevent problems from happening. But in my experience, I don't know if you guys experience this too, but when a kid gets a talker and it's an iPad, a lot of times it's not part of the management system by the whole school district. The IT person isn't managing the talker iPad the same way they're managing the hundreds of iPads that are used for like a math app. So that's my experience. When guided access is turned on, can you turn the iPad off and can you adjust the volume? Yes. So in that video I just played, after you set up guided access, you get like options in the bottom left corner. That's where you can make the volume button still work, and you can make what's called the, oh, what did they call it? I call it the power button, but they called it something else. Let's go back.
Settings app. Get some options I need to change.
Top button. So they call it the top button, but to me it's the power button. You can enable that. Once it's green, that means you can still turn the iPad on and off even when it's in guided access. to answer that question. And then how do you address when family members want the passcode to the TDC iPad for something else? I am very clear that this is not for something else. I don't know. I send out this vibe that like, that's not appropriate. Like if it's owned by the family, that's a gray area. But even still, if it's owned by the family, I still tell them, if your child sees that it can be used as a toy, then that's obviously going to be the focus, not to use it to communicate. And if they're playing a game or watching a video on it, they can't also at the same time tell their little brother to go away. Like it has to be one or the other. So I try to educate them on that. But yes, there's always going to be a few families who, as soon as the talker comes home, they're just going to use it as a toy. And sadly, I have not figured out a solution for that. So if anybody has any suggestions, please share. How do you feel about separate communication devices and fun devices? I have students who have used one for both and reject it in guided access. I would definitely recommend a separate device be the one for fun and it be called an iPad or a device, but the one that's for communication be called the talker. When you say I have students who have used one for both and reject it in guided access, you mean like you're using guided access to lock them into the fun app too? I just want clarification on that before I go down that rabbit hole. All right, let's move on. What does a cheerful giver look like? They don't care when you take their device away to edit it. They happily hand it over for hours. It's fine with them having no device in the meantime. Their support person agrees, oh yeah, he or she won't need it. And that student is not excited to get it back from you when you give it to them, or they don't even notice. This is definitely a problem because it shows that they don't see it as valuable and the person with them doesn't see it as valuable. So a way to combat this is to minimize the time that the device is out of the user's hands. And the best way to do that is to do remote editing or syncing. So for TouchChat and LampWords for Life, there's a free program for a computer with Windows called Chat Editor. And you can install that just by Googling Chat Editor and finding the installation link. You probably need your IT person to install it for you, unless it's your own laptop. But then what you could do is you could spend hours changing buttons on your computer, and the student has their talker the whole time. And then you're going to manually export that file into a Google Drive or into Dropbox, which is also free. And then you're going to go grab that kid's talker for maximum 5 minutes, and you're going to open the file on their talker from Google Drive or Dropbox and import it. So you would never have the kid's talker for more than 5 minutes. And what I like to do is follow them around as I'm doing that import really quickly. I'm still there with them. I'm not actually taking the talker out of the room. So they see that there's no situation where I'm going to steal their talker and they have nothing. And I also want the support people and the teacher to see that as well. For TD Snap, you can use a professional license of TD Snap on an iPad or a Windows operating system for free. And when you make changes on that, it'll actually sync through the internet to their talker without you even having to go find them in class and put your hands on their talker. So that's called syncing, where you don't have to manually move a file. So that's even better. For Proloquo Go, you can use what's called Proloquo Go for Mac on a Mac computer. It costs $125. and it's similar to Chat Editor where you have to manually move a file, but you could move it using AirDrop, which is even quicker than having to go into Google Drive or Dropbox. So this would probably take you like 30 seconds, but you do have to physically go close to the student to do an AirDrop of a Proloquo to Go file. But again, that means you're never having to steal the student's talker to make changes. And then for Cough Drop, you can use what's called a supervisor account on any device that has internet. So you could be using it on your laptop, you could be using it on your phone, literally any device that goes on the internet, you could quickly go make a change to a button, and then you could sync it through the internet and it'll show up on the student's talker without you having to physically go find the student, similar to TD Snap. The question mark about whether this costs $25 is because their website is kind of contradictory about whether you can do it for free or whether you have to pay $25 for a supervisor account. And so I had reached out to them to ask for clarification, but I didn't get an answer. So not sure if you have to pay $25 to do that, but even if you do, $25 is pretty manageable. All right, let me go back to the Q&A. Can you please help me find volume control and on permissions when in guided access? I think that was in the video for guided access. So when this is over, if you could go back and look at that video again of how to set up guided access, I think that'll answer your question. Lane shares that Grid 3 also has remote editing that you can sync without taking the device away. Thank you, Lane. Yeah, I wasn't able to cover every single AAC software option, but I really appreciate you sharing that about Grid 3. If you have your own iPad with the software on it, you can AirDrop the files back and forth with LAMP and TouchChat, and you're editing on your own iPad and then just AirDropping it back to the student. Yes, this is actually personally what I do, because as an AAC specialist, I have my own talker with every single app on it, but I realize that many SLPs don't have that. So yes, Renee is right that the best and quickest option is to have your own iPad with the same app as a student that you work with, but maybe you work with 3 different students who have 3 different apps and each app costs $300. So that's just not realistic. But thank you for sharing that. Anna Maria says, I cannot put my Proloquo on guided access by pressing the round button 3 times. Do I need to go into settings? Yes. So the first step is to go into the settings, follow that how-to video so that you turn on guided access, and then the triple clicking will work for you. Marina asks, is there a way to do remote editing with Proloquo to Go with a Dell? No, it's only on a Mac, unfortunately. Yeah, that is a bummer. And vice versa, Chat Editor doesn't work on a Mac. So Chat Editor is the one for TouchChat and LAMP, and that one only works on a Windows computer, not on a Mac. So I feel like I always meet people who want to do Chat Editor on a Mac and people who want to do Proloquo to Go editing on a Windows computer, but they're both like stuck in their own worlds, unfortunately. How do you know which version of Chat Editor to download? I assume the newest version. Yes. There's like a whole list, and I think the newest version is the top one, but it definitely just has the highest number. So if you just look for the highest number, you'll know that that's the newest one. Okay. Oh, this is my slide about guided access. Okay, for the super hackers who have figured out that guided access will be off after the iPad battery dies completely. This is where you want to use the strategy of screen time, okay? So there's a 4-digit passcode just for screen time. It's totally separate from guided access. It's separate from a passcode that might be to get into the iPad in general. So this one is like the super secret passcode that you would never give anybody else on the team. And what you want to do is go into content privacy restrictions this is where you could hide specific apps like the App Store, the Safari app. You can hide in-app purchases. And then if you go to app limits, that's where you can limit all the other apps on the entire iPad to only 1 minute. And so I did make a how-to video about this. Sorry, I couldn't remember when somebody was asking.
Settings, screen time. Use screen time passcode. Obviously use a better passcode than that. If you want to be able to recover your passcode using your Apple ID, enter it and hit OK. I'm going to skip this. Skip. And I'm going to go into content and privacy restrictions. Turn that on. Enter the code I just made. And iTunes and App Store purchases allows you to completely hide the App Store when you hit Don't Allow. So the App Store app will be gone now. Deleting apps. You can do Don't Allow. And in-app purchases, Don't Allow. Always require the password. Back. Allowed apps. You want to turn off Safari, SharePlay, leave the camera, Siri dictation, leave AirDrop on, and turn off CarPlay.
And I just want to say at this point, I usually leave the camera and AirDrop on because I use the camera to take pictures of people and things that I'm adding to buttons in the AAC app. So I wouldn't want the camera hidden because it takes me a long time to have to go unhide it. And I leave AirDrop because I'm moving the edited files from my Talker to their Talker using AirDrop. But obviously, if the main problem is that your student is playing with the camera, then go ahead when you're at this step and turn off the camera because that's going to completely hide the camera app. You can still always get back to it. It'll just take you a couple minutes. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Because you're going to use the camera for your AAC app, and you're probably going to use AirDrop possibly to transfer files for your AAC app, so probably want to leave that one on too. And then going back to screen time, there's also the app limits section, and that's going to allow you to limit every other app to 1 minute. And then just go to always allowed. And add your AAC app. So we don't want text messaging to be always allowed. We don't want Apple Maps to be always allowed. But you'll see your AAC app in this list here, and you can click the plus to make that one always be allowed. And so now you'll notice my App Store is gone, but Photos is still there, and Camera is still there, Settings is still there, but literally every other app that the student might try to play around in, after 1 minute, this app will just lock and it'll say that their time is up. So this really helps to make the iPad less fun for those super hackers.
Yeah, so I didn't wait the full minute in the video to show you, but after a minute, the screen would lock, just go gray, and there would be a little hourglass, and it would just say, you've reached your time limit for today. So I have had students who, no matter how much I tell the parents, like, check and make sure it's in guided access, it's not happening. So I've made every app besides the AAC app lock after 1 minute, and also had a talk with that student, like, because the kids who hack it this much are usually kids that you can just talk to. Their receptive language is good. They understand what they're doing. So I told him, I know you like to look at the map. I know you like to look at the calendar, use the calculator, but I set them so they're all going to lock after 1 minute. And because this is your talker, this is not an iPad for you to play with. This is a talker. And we definitely saw a big change in his behavior, because he realized that we were serious, basically. Let me go back to the Q&A. Cough drop supervisor accounts are free when tied to a paid communicator account. Thank you, Alyssa, for clarifying that. So that's great news for Cough Drop, where you can edit remotely and then sync it for free. Great. To clarify, they walk into school with a home device. I put it in guided access when they get to school to keep them in the ASAP. Then they won't use it because they want YouTube. Okay, yes. I could understand why that would happen. I feel like if I did that to my own kids, that would happen. So I would probably want to have a team meeting to talk about getting a different device to be used for fun and keeping those two devices completely separate. One is a talker, and it's always locked into the AAC app, even when they go home. And then the other one is for fun, like YouTube, and even make them look different cases and everything. I have a student who seems to be able to make changes, edits within Proloquo, even though the settings button is passcode protected. It does not appear that he has figured out the passcode. Is there another way to make changes, maybe using the search button? I don't know. That's a really good question, Amanda. If anybody else knows the answer to Amanda's question, please help her out. Also, Proloquo to Go has really great email support. They usually get back to you like within a couple hours. So that might be one that you just need to submit on their website, the question, and they'll get back to you pretty quickly. How can we get a copy of this info taught here? So James has the slides, and pretty sure he shared them out for everybody who registered. And then the recording of this, like our discussion and everything, will be shared out. I think you'll receive an email as soon as James processes the video recording, and then you can watch the recording again. If you allow searches in Proloquo to Go to appear on pages where they're hidden, yes, the icons will now appear. You can turn that ability off in the restrictions settings. So I think Lauren is trying to answer Amanda's question about Proloquo to Go. Thank you, Lauren. Anna asked, does anyone know if TouchChat has a free or discounted supervisory app option? I'm a newer SLP in a clinic with several clients that have it through AbleNet. I don't believe TouchChat has a free or discounted supervisory app option, kind of like what Cough Drop has. I don't think TouchChat has that. So your best bet is to use Chat Editor on your laptop if your laptop is a Windows laptop. Lori says, I have a student coming at 1. Can I take the quiz later? James, you can go ahead and answer that. Oh yeah, we are running out of time here.
Setting.
Okay, for the unmotivated who likes everything and doesn't not like anything, the strategy I would use is a preference assessment. So you're asking yourself, what do they do when they're allowed to completely roam around and do whatever they want? Complete freedom. What do they do? It might not be getting a toy because that's what we expect kids to do, but it might be just staring out the window or tapping on something or spinning. But think about what they like to do when they're allowed to do whatever they want. Also, what do they sustain interest in the longest? And what do they care about when it's taken away? So sometimes I'll get a peer to go, I'll say, go take that away from Jimmy, and then see what Jimmy does when the peer takes it away. If Jimmy doesn't care, then clearly that's not something that we're going to use as a motivator. But if Jimmy gets really upset, then that's something he cares about. So we want to use that as a preference. And you also need to think outside the box. Think about what do they like as far as sensory? It could be they like warm things or cold things. They like wind, they like water, different textures. They might like videos of familiar people singing to them, or a picture of a pet, or a video of their dog running. Really think outside the box about what is motivating to your student if everybody feels like they don't know what the student likes and what they don't like, because this could be the key to getting them to engage with you, because you're giving them something that they truly do enjoy. And then choosing vocabulary targets. Sorry, I have to rush through this, but what I would recommend is start with an observation and note what the individual is already expressing. So what are the things that they're already thinking to say? So we're not having to teach them something new. They're already doing it, but they're doing it in a way that a stranger wouldn't understand, or in a way that could be expressed more appropriately. So like this student in the picture is just pushing something away instead of saying no. So they could be saying no, which would be much more appropriate than pushing. And then also be sure to observe them interacting with someone who knows them well, like a parent, an aide, and ask that person to announce what they think the individual is trying to say. So you're observing the para working with the student, and the para is saying, oh, you're telling me you don't like how the glue got on that part of the paper, because you probably don't know the student as well as the person who spends all day with them. So try to take notes of what that person who knows the student really well is interpreting, and you need them to announce what they think the student is saying. If you and that person can't interpret, just try to describe whatever the student was doing. It could be a gesture or behavior or some kind of speech approximation, and the context, the situation, so that you can then describe it to other people and ask their opinion. Because I've definitely found it takes a village to try to figure out what students are saying. So sometimes like the mom would be the only one who would know. But if you email her and describe like, he was doing this, she would say, oh yeah, he was trying to tell you blah, blah, blah. And then that's great for you to know. And then what I do is I try to classify each of those expressions as either requesting, directing people, protesting, gaining attention, answering a question, asking a question, greeting, or commenting, labeling, so that you kind of have an inventory of all the things that the student is already expressing. And then you're going to narrow it down to like the top 10 things that they're already expressing most frequently. And so this is an actual list from a student. So the number one thing he was trying to say to people was, I want to eat. And then number two, he's trying to say help all the time, and open, and then chocolate coin, count my tickets, I want a prize, I want a ticket. So you really get into the student's mind, like, what do they care about? What are they always fixated on? Those are the things that we want in their talker, and we want to model, so that they're not just using their unclear speech and then giving up, or they're not just using behavior and then getting upset. You share this list with the team, make sure that everybody agrees and there isn't anything else that they think should be added to the list, and then edit the robust vocabulary as needed to make sure you include all the things on the list in a user-friendly way. So if it's something really urgent like help, it should be close to the homepage or even on the homepage so that it's easy to get to. But honestly, if these are the top 10 things that he's trying to say all day long, all of them should really be easy to get to, right? So that they're accessible and they're easy for people to model, because these are the ones they're already going to be motivated to say. We don't have to teach them. It's not something that we want them to say. It's something that they are already trying to say. That makes a huge difference in choosing your vocabulary target. So the goal is either for the individual to use the new vocabulary and their talker in general to either replace a problem behavior, which is what we call shaping behavior, like request a break using language instead of just running away. Or number two, it's to increase independence. So repair a communication breakdown without relying on an interpreter. Could your student repair a breakdown with a peer and you're seeing the para just standing off to the side? That's true independence. But if they're looking to the para to help them out and play interpreter, then that's not independent, right? They're relying on adult support. So that's usually, I break down the goal for like maybe a higher functioning student would be number two, and maybe a student who needs more support is number one. But by doing that observation and making that list, you're doing the same thing for both students. You're really thinking about what they're trying to talk about, not what everybody else wants them to talk about, which is really important. So lastly, I just want to end with another video of Jack because he's so funny.
Baby, look.
What?
Baby.
The baby.
You will walk. Baby, walk.
The baby wants to go for a walk?
Yeah.
Go.
We can't go because we need to stay on the chair.
Baby, there's a baby.
Sorry, baby.
Did you walk? You go walk.
Do work.
My baby walk.
The baby works.
Do
Good
you
job,
walk,
baby.
My baby. My baby, please.
Okay, you sit.
I don't do my baby.
Oh, what are you gonna do?
Baby. No, not baby.
Next to you?
Yes, baby, me. Baby, go.
Go ahead.
Hi, baby.
What is your name?
Baby.
I gotta go.
Oh,
I gotta go.
gotta go?
I
Bye,
gotta
baby.
go. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go.
Oh,
Oh, baby.
I gotta go.
see how you did it too much?
My
Only
baby
one
will
time.
walk.
One time, Jack. Baby's gonna go for a walk. Very nice.
To walk.
Gotta go.
Bye.
Bye, baby.
So if that was your observation and you were trying to determine what is Jack's goal, what should he be working on? You should be working on saying, I want to leave, right? Because he's showing me that with his behavior. He tried to walk away on the other side of the room. Now he's walking away right in front of the camera. So he's already showing me that's what he's trying to say. But I need to teach him that the target on the talker is I want to leave, or I want to be done, or I want to break, or whatever you decide the language target is, but it should be based on what the student is already showing you that they're already thinking and trying to get across. Okay, so if you have more specific questions, I'm sorry we ran out of time, but my email is right there for you. A lot of these questions are best answered by me sending you a link to a how-to video on YouTube or a screenshot of the iPad menu or the app menu. So it would be a lot easier for me to answer your questions through email because I can send you those resources. This techie stuff is definitely really tricky. So I just want you to remember you make a huge difference in these individuals' lives who have talkers. And I just want to encourage you to keep going and keep persisting and trying to figure all this techie stuff out. Okay, James, do you want to wrap it up?
Sure, sorry, I was just responding to an email. Thank you everyone for attending. Be on the lookout for that assessment and survey link that'll be coming out tomorrow. I have also put it in the chat, so if you were able to get that link, go ahead and complete that assessment whenever you have time. It's open for 1 week, so you have now until next Friday to complete that. If you have any questions, you can always email ableu@ablenetinc.com. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Anne. Have a great day.